President requests that proceedings under the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'm here on the floor today with my friend and colleague from the state of Idaho to speak in support of legislation that we have just dropped today. This is the Bipartisan Sportsmen's Act of 2015. I have introduced it today along with the prime co-sponsor, Senator Heinrich from New Mexico. I think it is important to recognize that this bipartisan bill is supported with original co-sponsors, the senator from Idaho, Senator Risch, Senator Manchin, Senator Fisher, Senator Heitkamp, as well as myself and Senator Heinrich. And I want to acknowledge Senator Heinrich's role in this and his staff for working with us to revise and reintroduce this important bill. But I also want to acknowledge the great work that the bipartisan leadership of the Senate Sportsmen's Caucus has done on these issues, led ably by my friend from Idaho. And I think it is important to recognize the groundwork, the legwork that went into development of this bill and the work that the caucus did in doing so. So thank you for all of the good hard work. But we're here today not only to announce this reintroduction, because this is now the third Congress that we have tried to advance a Bipartisan Sportsman Act, but also to really kind of re-up the conversation about the importance and really to urge the Senate to come together to pass legislation such as we're talking about today. We've got sportsmen all over the country. I come from a big state that's wide open, and people come to Alaska to hunt and to fish and then never want to leave, and that's fine. That's how my husband came to Alaska. It was the lure of sport fishing on the Kenai River. So many of our military are on assignment to Alaska, and they end up staying because of the hunting and fishing and these recreational opportunities that we have. But it's not just in places like Alaska and Idaho that have great outdoors. It's all over the country, from big cities, small towns, north and south. And for so many of us, hunting is a tradition that's passed down from generation to generation. Certainly my family is evidence of that. But I think it is important to recognize that while when we talk about hunting and fishing as being these best-known recreation opportunities, what we also include with this legislation acknowledges enthusiasts who go outside to go boating, so many of the other outdoor activities. We talk a lot on this floor about jobs and economic opportunities and what that brings to our nation, the important role that they play. Sportsmen and sportswomen really are economic contributors when you think about their role. Back in 2013, there were approximately 37 million people who hunted or fished in America. That's roughly equal to the entire population of the state of California. Those numbers are always on the rise. And again, when you have strong numbers, you also have strong economic impact. Sportsmen and women spent roughly $90 billion in 2013. Those numbers are probably have risen since then. And they go not only into gear and equipment, which is what you would expect, but also to the travel industry, to the hospitality industry, and to so many other sectors of the economy. Spending by sportsmen and women also aids our conservation efforts. Excise taxes on fishing and hunting and shooting equipment, motorboat fuel, as well as the fees for licenses and stamps, these are all dedicated to state fish and wildlife management and conservation. And these folks care deeply about the environment and for conservation, and that's why these excise taxes are in place to take care of our natural resources. Since their establishment, the wildlife, sport, and fish restoration programs have contributed over $14.5 billion to conservation. I mentioned Alaska and its role as kind of a magnet for those who like to hunt and fish. In my state alone, we've got over 125,000 individuals who engage in hunting every year. It's created more than $439 million in retail sales, $195 million in salaries and wages. In in Alaska, we bring in over $53 million to the state and local governments each year. We had a big holiday a year or so ago when Cabela's opened its doors. It was like we'd finally arrived on the scene. All of our sports hunters and fishermen were loving it. Fishing side, again, you think about the economic impact in my state, it's even more impressive. Last year, over 460,000 people bought fishing licenses to take part in some of the best fishing in the world. It brought about $1.4 billion to Alaska's economy. These are huge contributors to our tax base, to our economy, and just key to who we are as a state. So what we are introducing today, this Bipartisan Sportsmen Act of 2015, it builds on the efforts of last year. And last year's bill saw 46 members of this chamber coming together to support it. So what we've done, Mr. President, we've taken all the provisions from the previous bill, except for 2 that were enacted in other legislation, and then we've added some additional bipartisan provisions. We have Senator Heinrich's revised Hunt Act. We have a couple others that are new to the bill. But all told, what these do is increase access, provide greater opportunities for sportsmen and women to enjoy our public lands. So there's a lot of different components in it. I know that my colleague from Idaho will speak to several of them. I want to just highlight a couple that I think are important in this discussion. First is a bill that I've championed for several years now. It's called the Recreational Fishing and Hunting Heritage and Opportunities Act. And what it does is protects recreational hunting and fishing on our BLM and our national forest lands, while reaffirming that other prior congressional actions enacted to protect hunting and wildlife conservation. So the bill that we've introduced, and again, this is the same one that we've had previously, but it requires BLM and Forest Service lands to be open to hunting, to recreational fishing or recreational shooting as a matter of law, unless the managing agency acts to close lands to such activity. So it's open unless otherwise closed. So leaving lands open unless closed means that agencies need not take action then to open them up to hunting and fishing. Agencies are still permitted to close or put restrictions on land for a number of purposes, such as resource conservation and public safety. But on the whole, what this is it's really an affirmation that sportsmen, sportswomen, they're welcome on our public lands. Isn't that what our public lands are supposed to be all about, is being able to access them? There's another provision in the bill, the Hunting, Fishing, and Recreational Shooting Protection Act, which again has been included. This was introduced previously by Senator Thune and Klobuchar as a standalone bill, but it's language that's very, very important to many of us and to nearly all the sportsmen's groups that we've heard from. We've also got provisions in there that deal with some of the efforts to limit ammunition and fishing tackle by some organizations. I think we know that if you can't afford traditional ammunition and fishing tackle, makes it pretty tough to go out and enjoy these opportunities. We've got good pieces in here relating to conservation priorities, including the North American Wetlands Conservation Act and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So again, I want to thank the Sportsmen's Caucus. I want to thank Senator Heinrich as the prime Democrat lead on this. But again, my hope is that we're able to build this coalition here on the floor, get even beyond the number 46, which was what we had last go around with this legislation. I think we're going to have good discussion within the committee and here on the Senate floor. But my hope, Mr. President, is that third time's going to be the charm for this sportsman's legislation. It's important to us, it's important to our economy, and it's something that I'm certainly willing to take aim at. Sorry for the pun. And with that, I would yield to my friend from